My name is Courtney King, and I work at First Things First, which is Arizona's early childhood agency. And I work in the program team. Specifically, I'm a Quality First program coordinator, and Quality First is Arizona's quality rating and improvement system. And I oversee mostly the assessment and grading side of that work.
So talk about why you were drawn to work in the field in the first place.
I actually had an amazing experience with some neighbors, Randy and Eli, when I was very young growing up. Randy and Eli adopted or fostered all special needs children. And so the kids you grew up playing in the neighborhood with, they had Oddcom devices, they rode in wheelchairs, they used sign language. And it wasn't until I got into school and actually moved cities that I realized not everybody had friends like that. And what I thought were cool and different and neat experiences, other people found weird and frightening. And it gave me a great passion to work with children and families where kids have special needs, and they need to know that that is perfectly okay. And those children are normal like everybody else, and they deserve experiences like everybody else. And so from a very young age, I knew that's what I wanted to do when I grew up.
So that's very pertinent now as we talk more and more about equity and diversity.
Yeah, I think I started my career as a special education teacher in the school system. I worked mostly K-3. And what I learned very quickly was I had kids who had already learned that school could be a scary place and an unfun place. And they'd already had experiences that showed them that education may not be for them. And no 6-year-old should have that. And no family of a 6-year-old should be scared to talk to a teacher. And I just had in my mind this mantra I heard in all of my coursework going to school, which is prevention before intervention. Like, we need to get younger. And I really had a drive to start to work with younger programs and help people build experiences where children and family feel like they belong here. Education is for everyone, and that's what I wanted to do. So I actually moved out of the public school system. I began to work for Quality First in the assessment team, and to work that side of it to help programs grow in ways that show them that everyone has a place here and you can develop quality education for everyone. And then I just kind of worked my way back up the food chain, back into doing kind of policy level work.
Talk a bit about what's been happening with the pandemic, with especially that population that you talk about.
I think what we've seen a lot during the pandemic is, especially because many children who have special needs attend, at least in parts, school-based programs, and all of those programs closed. All of those children go home. Families have really been put at the brunt of trying to manage their children's education from home, working on skills that kids were never supposed to do in isolation. Young children learn by playing with one another. They learn by hands-on experiences. And now families are at the brunt of that many times, trying to do their own lives. And I think that's put a huge strain on the system. I think early childhood educators are doing everything they can do. I've never seen a more resilient workforce, people who are more willing to try anything and everything they know how to do, and anything and everything they don't know how to do to make it worse. But I think there's a lot of people trying to walk in the unknown, trying to do the best they can. And as children start to transition back into programs, those who had the most needs, we're seeing those gaps, that learning and achievement gap we so want to close during the birth to 5 period, start to swing open again widely. And at a systems level, I think the conversations then become, what do we put in place to close that gap back up? You know, that this is where we are. We know the gap that was already there, that early education was meant to close for populations that needed it. It's not working right now. And so what's new and different that we're going to put in place to make that happen?
And what do you think that is? What do early childhood professionals need right now?
I think more than anything else, early childhood professionals need options that work for their specific situation and community. I think what COVID has brought to bear that we already knew, which is every community is different, every program is different. And though we all have ideals for what quality education should be like, We all answer to somebody else about what our program rules can and should do. And when we create guidance as state systems and as we provide support, what we need to do is provide a structure that allows the flexibility for professionals to be professionals and to use what they know will work in their programs for their family. And that's not going to be the same anywhere and everywhere. And the profession and the world needs to start to create policies that allow for that.
Are you optimistic about the future? Has the pandemic taught you anything that...
I think a couple of things. I think one thing that I learned very quickly was maybe early education was more ready for this pandemic than a lot of other professions. We are a profession that knows how to wash our hands. We know how to do health and safety. Many of the recommendations that were put in place with CDC have been good early childhood practice guidelines forever and ever. And so I think a lot of people, this flew out of left field. Early childhood was like, we can do this. We know how to do this. I think the other thing that I am so inspired by is early childhood didn't give up. They didn't roll over. They didn't throw up their hands and say, we can't do this. There was a dedication right away that said, we need to do what's best for children and families. And that is stay open, keep as many of our doors open so families have some place to go. And to do that, that means that we need to figure this out. And they've done that by creating communities. There is more interconnection in early childhood programs, talking to each other and learning from each other than I can ever remember. And I have great hopes that that continues, that the value of them speaking to one another and learning from one another, because they'll know and learn more than we could ever teach them, that stays with us. I also have great hopes that the community at large, the greater world has started to figure out that childcare is essential, that the economy doesn't work if parents don't have quality places to put children, and that those quality places have to have open doors and they have to have sustainability plans, and that it's everybody's job to make that happen. And I think more and more people are recognizing that as the greater world tries to go back to work.